Welcome to Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us.
While this is a podcast for farm families, sometimes our content isn't for the whole family. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Barnyard Language. We didn't do an update last week, so now we've got 2 weeks of sheep report and Katie and her travels. So, Katie, what's up in Iowa? What was up when you were not at home?
I feel like we should have, for the sheep report, some sort of like little, like, music, something like that.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Lambing. It's a thing. It's a lot of a thing. I was like, I don't want to say anything too good about it, because that seems like asking for trouble. Maybe I can just say that nothing too exciting has happened and just leave it at that.
That's good. Exciting with sheep is usually not a good thing, right?
Yeah. Exciting with livestock, generally.
Yeah, you don't want excitement with livestock. Maybe for like a bull rider, then exciting is good. But yeah, there's limited times where you want excitement in animals in the same sentence.
That's true. I mean, boring for a bull rider is really bad because you don't get points if nothing happens.
If they just wander out of the chute.
Yeah, things have been uneventful. Let's put it that way. We have a bummer lamb who has a mother, but somehow the lamb ended up on the far side of the fence for a long enough amount of time that none of the mothers she might belong to would take her because
Right. They're like, I've never seen that creature before. I have no idea.
She's like, I don't even know what that is. That is definitely not a lamb.
That's definitely, I couldn't possibly feed that.
Definitely not my lamb. This is what happens also when more than one sheep lambs at once, is it's easier to lose track of who they belong to. And yes, I even tried like rubbing placenta all over her, and then the sheep just got confused and upset. And anyway, so I took her to the kids' classes yesterday, which I am now very, very popular among the first and second graders at my kids' school, which, life goals. It's good to be popular with somebody.
And the maintenance staff as well, or did it keep things pretty clean?
We brought towels, and we stayed on the tile, because Mama's not dumb. Other than that, things have been pretty good. We bought 2 new cows. The wonderful old neighbor farmer that we bought our first cows from is entering hospice and decided to sell off his cows while he could still be part of it, which I think has been really nice in a lot of ways. And we were given first choice, which is possibly the biggest compliment you can give somebody when you're selling off your life's work. He's been breeding these cows for 60 plus years, so they are his legacy, and being given first choice was really special.
He must think you're doing okay.
Yeah, I think I was telling you about this recently, Arlene, but when we first bought them, he drove past our farm multiple times a day, every day, for I think probably more than a week, to make sure that the cows were okay. Which, thankfully, he only lives like a mile away, so it wasn't too much of a haul.
Right, he wasn't making a huge loop.
Yeah, he would have brought the livestock trailer over and packed them up if he thought we weren't keeping them in the style to which they are accustomed.
Right, yeah. He didn't even cash the check for the first week, just to make sure.
No, he would have kept the money and the cows if he thought we were doing right by him, which is fair, So we have a bucket calf that my daughter is taking very good care of, and he and the kids wear each other out multiple times a day because they all run around the yard, which is pretty hilarious. And we have lambs, which is cute. And we have mud, which is less cute. I went to Chicago last week, and thank God all the sheep held off on lambing until the day I got home. So
well timed.
We're making up for it now, but that's good.
Yeah. You did say that you were trying to fit in that business trip before lambing. So other than that one.
one born before, and everybody else started the day I got home, which was very kind of them. And I got a lot of work done on my trip, despite having to completely reformat my computer while I was on the road, which was less than awesome.
Right. Especially when all of your work is on a computer.
And I had not realized how many settings and apps and things I had perfected until they disappeared. Oh, got all the passwords. Yeah.
Right. And all the logins and all the passwords. And
But
yes.
now I'm taking the opportunity to clean up and fix all the things that I had been putting off cleaning up and fixing. So that's good. Yeah. But it's strange to hunt down all the random things that don't work right. Other than that, had a good trip. It was Chicago-y. How have you been, Arlene?
Well, it hasn't been the greatest time, honestly. So, my dad died, and that's kind of the summary of the update, I guess. I mean, there's more to it than that, obviously. But yeah, I had mentioned that he was in the hospital a couple of times and that things are pretty serious, and they got more serious. So that has been obviously really hard. Things that I'm grateful for include the fact that my mom and my sisters and I all got to be there when he died, which was obviously terrible, but also I wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere else. And I'm really glad that we got to do that together. I don't know if glad is the right word, but I think you know what I mean. And he was able to stay in the same ICU where he had been for the weeks before he passed. And the team there was just incredible. Some of the most amazing people I've ever met. And I'm sure that it takes special people to work in those kinds of departments and to deal with serious illnesses and all of the complications that go with those, and also all the emotions and the families. So I will always, in a weird way, kind of treasure that time and those people that we met who, we may never see again, but it was beautiful in its own way. And then we planned a funeral, which we also tried to make beautiful in its own way. My parents have attended, since they were married, a tiny little country church that we knew would not be big enough because my dad is one of those people who makes friends everywhere he goes and has a big community and was very active in his community, you know, until days before he went into the hospital. So he was part of the curling club, he was a golfer, he volunteered for multiple different kinds of organizations. Before his stroke, he served on many different boards and executives in various capacities. So he had connections across Canada and the world through those types of things. And, he was a farmer. So there's also the agricultural community. So we kind of tried to bring the spirit of that little church into a hall that was a bit bigger, quite a bit bigger. And it was standing room only, which was pretty wild to see. We thought we had enough chairs and we definitely didn't. So, not that the number of people left to mourn is indicative of the life that you've led, but the support and love that we felt from our community and our family was beautiful. And yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there for today. But that's what I've been up to.
I know my husband mentioned that he saw a memorial to your dad on an American ag company Facebook post. And that was, it's always astounding to see how far people reach, even when it might seem small. How far, you know, gave me a little bit of a chuckle that it was a semen company. But that's just a farmer thing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, he was the president of the board of that semen company for a year. So, yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like it was as good as it could have been, considering that it was always going to be horrible.
Yes, yeah, that is true. And my sisters and I gave one of the eulogies, and one of the things we talked about is the fact that that a life, we all know this, life is hard and life is beautiful at the same time, and death is hard, and there's no getting around it. And I think farmers and farm families know that more than anyone else, because we experience it probably more frequently. But it is possible for a death to remind you how precious life is, and how important our relationships are. And I hope that I and my family, that my kids will take something or many things from his life, and from the experiences that he's had, and the lessons that he's taught us, and that will hopefully make us all better people, and that we can pass things on to other people. Because if not, what else are we doing here, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, on that happy note,
Woo!
on that note, we'll go ahead and introduce our guest for this week.
Everyone has an origin story, but some stories hit you in the heart, and the story behind one of our past guests is totally one of those. It all started with a young kid named Kawani.
Yeah, Sean, the chicken guy short of Blooming Health Farms, didn't know he'd be a chicken farmer, or that he'd be teaching you how to turn your flock into a business. It began with Kawani, a kid stuck in the court system who needed a second chance. He joined Sean at Blooming Health Farms to turn his life around.
One day, Sean showed Kawani how to sell fresh eggs at a local market. As Kawani started selling those eggs, Sean saw the real power in what he was doing. It wasn't just about the eggs. He was building skills and getting respect from the community. That one small act of selling eggs transformed his life.
And that's how Blooming Health Farms was born. Sean saw that selling eggs could be more than food. It could be a way to help others learn business skills and build their own futures. And now, through their online community called Pimp Your Flock, Blooming Health Farms is taking this mission even further.
Pimp Your Flock is a community for people who want to turn their passion for chickens into profits. You'll learn how to turn your flock into a real income source, and when you join, you're supporting Blooming Health Farms so they can help more kids like Kawani build a better future.
So if you're looking for a way to turn your flock into a business and be part of something bigger, join Pimp Your Flock at pimpyourflock.com. Not only will you learn the skills to make your egg business grow, but you'll also be part of a community that's changing lives.
Head over to pimpyourflock.com today and let's make an impact together, one egg at a time.
Today, we are excited to be talking to Stephanie Kloostra, who's joining us from not too far down the road from me. Well, a few hours, but in Canadian terms, we are not all that far away from each other here in Ontario. So, Stephanie, we always start our interviews with the same question. So this is your intro to our listeners. And we always ask, what are you growing? So it can be crops and livestock and kids and all kinds of other stuff. So, Stephanie, welcome. And what are you growing?
I always joke and say it's easier to say when I'm not growing, but I have a small farm and homestead here in central Ontario, and primarily we are focused on growing cattle. I'm mainly a beef operation right now, but it's very small. And in the meantime, I myself, I've been growing meat chickens, geese, ducks, egg layers. I've tried my hand at pigs and goats, and probably most importantly, my two young daughters as well. So, yeah, we've got a lot going on here.
Yeah, that is a lot of different things. So, as farmers, we usually end up asking what kinds of cows and what kinds of chickens and all that kind of stuff. So, are you a mixed bag, or do you specialize in any certain breeds, or what's your approach right now?
My love is primarily the Black Angus. I'm gonna be honest, we did not know what we were doing when we went out and bought our first two pregnant cows. And whoever advertised Black Angus did a really good job because, to me it sounded really good. I was like, that's gonna be easy to advertise. Let's go with that. Didn't realize at the time what the typical Black Angus attitude was like, but I think we got kind of lucky there because I had two girls that slowly won me over, and now we have a herd of about 13, and 80% of those are Angus. We do bring on other like beef varieties. I have a Hereford, and I do like also Red Angus. I'm gonna probably upset some people, but I feel they're very similar. It's just a color difference. But yeah, they we like Angus here.
Yep. And so you're talking about meat production with birds and those types of things. Are those for sale, or are you processing them yourselves and eating them, putting them in your own freezer, or kind of what does that side of things look like?
It's definitely been kind of a transitional thing over the last 5 years. I started off raising what's referred to as white rock here in Ontario. They're also called the Cornish cross across America. Meat bird variety. They grow out in 8 weeks. And I raised that as an option to provide to my customers because I knew I wouldn't have beef for quite a few years and I wanted to be able to start having product available. So for the last 3 years, we've raised 300 meat birds. That's the max here in Ontario before we have to start applying for, additional stuff. So I raised the 300 and it has been quite a learning curve on advertising and pricing to appeal to the public. And I've just decided this is going to sound bad, but I just don't like dealing with people as much as I thought I did. So now that the beef is coming available more and more, I am cutting back on meat birds and I think we've decided 100 this year, which we will process at home, meaning it won't be available for sale. It'll just be for our own family.
Yeah, because 300 birds means, if you've got a people who are only buying a couple, that could end up being quite a few customers that you have to interact with and get delivery set up and all of those things.
It's so much work. Like the chickens are definitely, there's a lot more output going out for, your final product. And I learned that the hard way, but it's just allowed me to gain more perspective and experience. So I was happy to do it. I'm just ready to consolidate, not work as hard, I guess, for the next 2 years.
Yeah, that's right. So when people talk about homesteading, often they're talking about gardening and those types of things too. Is that part of your current model, or you're basically focused on livestock?
Yeah, oh yeah. I like to say like we're a beef farm and then we're also a homestead because I'm doing so many other things on a small scale. I want to be able to produce as much of our own food as possible. So we are really focusing this year on expanding and growing our garden. I just am not a green thumb, so there's a lot more research and time and failure that goes into that for me than most. I've been really lucky in that I've always been very like working with animals is really easy for me. And so that was what I chose to focus on first, and it worked for me. And now we're kind of getting into sourdough and food preservation and growing fruit and vegetables, which we weren't focused on before. So we're kind of on both sides. We are farmers. And when I say we, it's mainly just me and my husband. We're first generation. But then we also are homesteaders and we have this whole other community of people and things we're doing on a small scale.
So, Stephanie, I'm going to throw something in there, and I mean this with the most love possible, but American homesteaders tend to be pretty pro gun for reasons. I know Canadian gun laws are really different, so are Canadian homesteaders still pro gun, or is there some other screw the government, we do what we want sort of a standpoint here? And I fully support that. Like, don't get me wrong, I fully support it.
Yeah, I mean, the gun laws in Canada make it I think that I don't know how to say it. I want to say that certainly we do still utilize firearms here on the property for our own protection. And it's something that I'm happy to have should anything go wrong or the world go to shit, I want to make sure that I have protection, but it's not the primary form of protection. I am very much peace and love at the end of the day. And I feel that we probably have a very similar attitude in that we don't really want the government in our business and we definitely consider ourselves rebels. However, I like to think that we have a peaceful approach to things in comparison to maybe our neighbors to the south.
I think, too, one thing that gets missed a lot in gun control in the States, and folks were very anti-gun, which I understand where they're coming from. I may or may not agree with all of it, is the necessity of having a way to put animals down if you have to. And, especially with larger stock like cattle, there's not a good way to do that that doesn't involve calling the vet otherwise. And that's not always feasible or desirable.
Or humane.
Or humane, yes.
Right? If you're having to wait, for a vet to arrive, that just not always the quickest process.
Yeah, I like to think that us homesteaders here in Canada, while most of us probably do have firearms in our possession on the property, we don't go out and acquire those to protect ourselves against humans. I don't think that that's really on the back of our minds very much. Specifically for me, I can only speak for myself, but I am growing more than what I need because I want people to feel comfortable to come here and be a part of what I'm doing.
I think something, Katie, on this topic, which didn't know we were going to get into, but I love that you always bring up stuff. I think as a Canadian, and I can't speak for everyone, but I can assume that if I'm going into my small town or even into a city, that most of the people that I meet are not going to be gun owners. They're
Yeah.
And even if they are gun owners, the vast majority of people that I see on the street are not going to be carrying a firearm. I would assume, and I think probably safely assume, that I could walk around most major cities and I would be, safe in thinking that no one was carrying a gun other than a police officer. And I feel like we have that Canadian privilege of being able to feel that way because that is probably the reality. I mean, there are probably neighborhoods where that might not be true, and of course there are exceptions, but for the most part, I feel like I can walk around safely in most places and that there isn't going to be anyone else out there with a gun. And I don't think that in places in the states that is the same thing. So I mean, I get it. I understand the sentiment when you think, or when the truth is that there are a lot of other armed people around you, that then it kind of becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy of like, well, if everyone else is doing it, then I have to do it to protect me and my family. And then that kind of like that just keeps going.
And I know that's one of the reasons, one of the first times I really realized how different rural parenting was than a lot of for instance, the podcast where we met Arlene, there was a discussion about people never letting their kids go to a home where someone owned a gun. And I was like, I get it, absolutely. But if we did that, our kids would literally never leave the house. And we own guns. So it seems kind of pointless, There's still a lot of debate around, storage and handguns and all sorts of, there are some obviously very valid concerns. But it's not unheard of to see people open carrying in Walmart here, which with the way people get around Black Friday is a little scary. I think it's definitely a statement at that point, especially in small town Iowa, but it is a very different vibe than my stereotype about Canada, really.
Right. And it's legal for them to do that. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Where it is not here.
And I would say like the majority of people that I know that own firearms are homesteaders or like within the rural community. So like you were saying, Arlene, like we don't go out and like you can go out and assume the majority of people around us aren't carrying. But I always joke like the people that we need to concern ourselves with, I mean, they are going to be a concern whether or not they have a firearm. And I always like to advertise, like, I have 4 livestock guardian dogs and a lot of other security measures in place before you will see any kind of weapon come out here. Like, you would be lucky to get to my home, like to my front steps, without an animal having already taken care of you. So that's my primary source of protection. And as I always say, we are hunters and we know how to butcher our own animals, and we have a really big compost pile. So you just don't want to show up to our house uninvited and aggressive.
Well, even at our farm store yesterday, somehow in conversation, the salesman said something about having 400 acres and a backhoe. And I was like, it's not an uncommon joke around here either. So,
If somebody shows up at my door, I'm not calling the police. So,
yeah. I mean, I might, but it's going to be a while, so I will just leave them out there with the dog. And if they remembered to bring dog treats, they'll be fine. And if they didn't, they can wait in their car. So,
Yeah, same thing here.
yeah, my dogs treed the Walmart delivery guy yesterday, so that was kind of a thing. But yeah, most of our delivery drivers bring boxes of dog treats. I sent Arlene a photo, but we got a FedEx package the other day, and the dogs were in the house, and there were dog treats sitting on top of the box when I opened the door. So, you know, that's our normal. But so, what is your ag background then, Stephanie?
I don't come from an agricultural background. I grew up on a native reserve here in Ontario, and I definitely grew up rurally. Like I had a great outdoors, woodsy upbringing, but it definitely had nothing to do with farming. And why I decided to go that route is disillusion that I could do it maybe. Like I like to watch people on YouTube. I was a big fan of Justin Rhodes and of Joel Salatin and Roots and Refuge and just other farmers and homesteaders. And I said, I think maybe we could do this. My husband and I were looking for property and we thought long and hard about what we wanted to do and where we wanted to go. And just jumped in head first without knowing what we were doing. We bought 56 acres that was already set up for cows, so it just made sense. So yeah, I did not have any background. We are very much first generation with nobody to give us much guidance. And I'm really just learning by going. So I make a real effort to find mentors with more experience than myself. I have a cow guru, a pig guru, a sheep guru, and when I had been off for about 3 years, I was on maternity leave when we first started our farm. So I was kind of at home, secluded. But once we decided that I needed to go back to work, I needed to make a little more money, I got a job at a dairy farm as well. So I have no experience, but I am growing that as much as I can. I'm jumping at every opportunity. And I basically tell anybody that has any knowledge, like, talk to me like I'm stupid, tell me everything. I am a sponge and I'll take it all in. So, my husband, we're very lucky. My husband is a tractor mechanic. So, we do have some experience with like the mechanical side and he can do the heavy equipment and all that stuff. But he did not come from a farming background either. That was just an interest and passion that led him to that as well.
So you've talked a little bit already about your first cows, but and kind of starting into chickens because they're a quick turnover. What were some of your other starting, like inaugural projects? And we were also curious about the things that you've tried out that decided were not for you or weren't a good fit for either your personality or for the land that you're using, or there's lots of reasons why we try things and then don't end up continuing them.
Yeah, absolutely. So 3 years before we bought our farm, I used to always tell people, I'd be like, "Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I want a goat named Doris." Like that was how I'd introduce myself. It was just so silly. And then we came to this property, and everyone that was with some sort of experience that came to look at the property, they're like, "You don't want to put goats on this. This is built for cows. It's already fenced for cows. Like if it doesn't hold water, it won't hold goats. So just don't do that." And I said, "Okay, fine." So we got the cows, and one of them was a cow named Patty, and we worked on infrastructure for the cows, so making sure that the barn was accessible and set up so they had an indoor area. We made sure that we had proper pasture space so that the fencing was all set up. Like I just didn't want to be chasing cows all over the countryside with my two toddlers in tow. And so that was primarily what we wanted to do. We wanted to fence in the entire property so we could just run cattle and start them working that land. So it doesn't feel like much because, I mean, looking at the property, it didn't look like much changed, but that was a huge, huge undertaking for us. It was like almost 4 months of installing the fencing and then finding people to help us and like, learning how to install electric fencing. It's not as easy as it sounds. Okay, it might be to some people, maybe they get that a little bit more than me, but even just figuring out how to get the strongest current running through my electric fence with what we had, and it was quite an undertaking that I'm glad we did now, because certainly I don't have to worry about cows escaping as much as when we first got them. And then other than that, it's been building like the mobile coops. So we have several chicken tractors. That was a requirement to even just get started on the meat birds. And then I'm a strong believer in just keeping things moving. I don't like something that just sits in place. So like even when we do the egg layers, they're out on pasture during the summer in a coop. I had a mobile like house for my pigs that we had to build. So just anything that could move will move around here. And that was key for us is keeping things small and easily movable. And then after a couple of years, I said, "Can I get a goat now?" And my husband said, "Sure." And I brought home 3 goats and they lasted about 2 months. It just was not for our property. They were, they, I think, are more for people who are interested in hobby farming and kind of more pets that also produce a little bit of something for you. That's what goats are. And I'm sure there are ways to, make it a larger operation, but I was not happy with my goats. They were impossible to keep in. They were very friendly, but that was half the battle was they were like on the hood of my car when I came out in the morning. So yeah, goats were definitely the thing.
They wanted to get in with you when you went to the dairy farm to work, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure that's the appeal to some people, but to me it was like, oh, I was very wrong. I do not need a goat named Doris. I'm gonna stick with my cow named Patty. So that was ours. I really like pigs. We just did that last year. We did Mangalitsa pigs, and I will do them again. They were very easy once they learned the electric fence. But yeah, we've just been spending the last 5 years slowly trying to figure out what we wanted to do and what we didn't.
I feel like fence is one of those things, like a lot of things that are more art than science, that it's not that it's hard to run fence or to run electric fence. It's hard to run fence that is worth having run. And it is hard to run fence that will actually contain something or actually keep something out. I mean, it's not that hard to put the fence out. Putting out a fence that actually works is another matter. Not that we've ever had that problem. Absolutely not at all. No.
Oh no, of course. Yeah, yeah. None of us, as we all have cows, all of our fences have kept them in all of the time. I'm sure.
Yes, all of my animals are always exactly where they're supposed to be at all times. For sure.
When we first got the farm, our cows got out during a really horrible storm, and I was walking them back down our dirt road, like down the road to back to the house, like herding them. And cars are driving by. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. We're going to be the talk of the town. Everyone's going to hate us because our cows won't stay in. And then I was talking to a farmer the next day at the feed store, and he's like, that happens every day. Like, don't even worry about it. It happens. Cows get out. Don't be stressed. And it made me feel so much better.
I feel like that's definitely one of those things that if somebody is being judgy, you can feel free to just ignore them. Because, especially if.
Or they don't have cows.
Yeah, especially if they're farmers, but even if they're not, don't be a dick. Unless there are those folks whose cows are out like 95% of the time. At that point, you can get a little like.
Yeah, that one gets a little questionable. Yeah.
That's different.
You got to invest in a little bit more fence in that situation.
Yeah, and it was tough for us because finding, like, we knew we wanted to encompass the property, but then turning that into pasture spaces, like, once it's permanent, it's permanent. So we kind of had to make those decisions and decide what we wanted, and we really didn't know yet. Like, there were some decisions that now I'm regretting we made. But yeah, fencing, I tell everybody, like, if you are going to get into farming, you're going to want infrastructure, and before even a barn, like, you need to have a fence to contain those animals.
I feel like fence too is kind of like putting a new roof on your house or like buying new tires. Like, incredibly unsexy, incredibly not super rewarding, especially for the price, but unbelievably necessary. And the not having to deal with the problems that come from not doing it is incredible as someone who has spent a lot of money on roofs in the last decade. I can say that it's worth it, but it's not fun, you know.
And fences.
Yeah, yeah. And only people who knew what you started with are going to be excited about it.
Yeah, because only other people who are looking at putting in roofs or fences are going to be like, ooh, let me take a look.
Yeah, it can be difficult sometimes people showing up, they're like, well, like, what have you done with the last 5 years? And I'm like, I promise, like, this is such an upgrade from where we started.
Would you like to walk some fence rows with me? I'll show you.
Yeah, like, how much time do you have? Yeah, even that, like, you kidding? We started with 2 cows, now we have 12. Like, that's something.
Yeah, that's right.
Are you a farmer or butcher ready to master direct-to-consumer marketing and meet success?
The team at ChopLocal is standing by ready to help. Sell your meat on the ChopLocal marketplace. Check out all their free meat marketing educational resources at ChopLocal University. Hire the team to help you out or tune into their new podcast called Meat Success.
And remember, there's more than one recipe for meat success. Let us help you fine-tune yours today at choplocaluniversity.com.
So, we've been following you on TikTok, and first question, I had to add this. As an old, I can say it, I feel like that Stu Buscemi meme a lot of the time, you know, where he's like, hello, fellow kids, like, you know, and he's got his skateboard, and like, how can we participate in social media in a way that's not ridiculously, like, trying to fit in with the youths, but also isn't too, like, I'm gonna say it, church basement-y. Like, you know, there's like that substitute teacher church basement sweatshirt with kittens on the front vibe. Maybe it's an Iowa thing, but if
I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah, if you know, you know. Like,
I must not be on my For You page, but but I get what you're saying, and like, I don't know, I just always encourage people to be themselves, especially farmers and homesteaders. So my big pet peeve is that farmers are not accurately represented on social media. Like, we can sit and record a video telling you about like this horrible incident that happened on the farm and like how your day went, and they'll post that. But who's going to sit, as you said, and listen to the lady like in her basement? You have to show them, right? Like, record those moments in the moment, or like somehow make it a little more appealing to people, which I try to do. But then those get censored. They get taken down, or there's like a video warning and people will scan past them before they watch them. So, I mean, all I can do is just encourage people to make the video. Like, don't sit there and be like, oh, if I post this, like, am I gonna get hate? Or is it gonna get taken down? Or is like, should I show this? Like, yeah, you really, honestly, every aspect of farming should be shown because people are so disconnected from it. And it not only should they become more connected with where their food's coming from, but the next generation farmer is those are less and less, right? Like, the people that are going to take over, the people that are interested in this industry and that are going to take over and continue with the success of this industry are less and less. And so we can't depend on Farmer Joe's son taking over the farm anymore. We need to make people that are not born into this life and haven't had these experiences, we have to draw them in somehow. We have to get them to become interested enough that they apply at a dairy farm, or that they go out and they say, hey, I want to learn how to drive a tractor. So I would say, as an older person, maybe don't focus on the trends. Don't worry about the audio. Like, literally just do vlogs. Be like, hey, I'm out with my chickens. This is what we're doing today. Or, I don't do vlogs like that so much. If something comes up, like one of those moments where it's like, hey, like, this cow is cast and I have to get her flipped over today. That's something I'm gonna whip my camera out for and make sure I get as much of it on film as possible. So that's my suggestion, is like, don't get up all in your own head and be worried about what people are gonna think, because that's gonna happen either way. Just post it and focus on the community of people that are important to you. So for me, it's always been that I don't care what this city person from Toronto is saying in my comments, because they don't live my life, they don't have my life experiences. I care more about the homesteaders and the people that I consider my friends. Like, if they're being judgmental or if they have something to say, then yeah, I'm going to take that a little bit more seriously. But everything else just got to roll off your back.
I think it is a good point too in animal ag that when we don't show bad things that happen and when we never talk about bad things that happen, we are leaving that entire narrative to be told by people who don't have the best interest of animal ag at heart. And by never talking about anything bad, we're leaving that there's nothing counteracting what animal rights activists are bringing to the table about what's happening. And, us just saying, well, that's not how it works. And then, yeah, us never actually showing what does happen it's not effective, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's why I did so well when I first started off. I have an alternate version of me that I like to refer to as Spicy Steph. And when she first started her own social media, she was ready to fight. Like anybody who came in and were like, this is what happens. I'd be like, no, it's not. What are you talking about? And I would go at it so aggressively that I think a lot of farmers really like that. Like those videos would really go far, but it just was like the worst attitude for me to have. Like instead of going at it and being like, I'm gonna fight you about this situation, I'm now trying to approach it as I understand you don't have the life experience that I do, but I would really love for you to be open-minded enough for me to explain it to you. Like I would love to educate you. And if you're not willing to, you want to believe the falsities and the lies that people are going to give you, that's like I can't change that. But I can give you reality and I can do it. I guess now I'm trying to do it in a nicer way. Like I'm not trying to be like, hey, idiot, that's not right. It's more like, oh, actually, let me show you a video of the reality and what actually happens. Yeah.
I think too it's something we miss because I am very, very anti-toxic positivity. Always look on the bright side of everything. And you're like, well, but sometimes shit sucks. Like, but when you surround yourself with that much negativity, because I am also one of those like meet me out back kind of like we can throw down people. Fine, but it really just breeds more negativity because I find myself looking for a fight at that point, and that's not healthy. And it is, I think, too, as producers, it's so easy to get so frustrated with the idiotic things that people believe. And you can't really blame them because nobody's there's not enough education going on to keep them from believing these things. It's not like they're getting a good education and then they're like, no, I don't think I'll listen to this factual thing. I think I would rather believe that birds are robots or whatever, instead of...
Right. That there's this huge underground of farmer conspiracy theories that people are actually seeking out.
Well, don't tell anyone, Arlene. Jesus.
Yeah, that's right. Spicy Stephanie has another channel and it's just conspiracy theories.
I would love that channel. I would watch that channel nonstop. But yeah, I mean, if we're not gonna educate people, we can't be too mad when they believe things that people do tell them, even if they're stupid, because they don't have any framework to hold it up against and go, does this make any sense? Or does this sound like birds are robots and the earth is flat? And I'm going to assume there's not a lot of flat earthers listening to our show. And if there were, there aren't now. So, sorry, folks.
So do you approach social media more now? You talked about informing, but also community. When you're creating, do you kind of have an audience in mind, or is it still kind of just what's happening and whoever finds it finds it?
Now I make my content for my community. So I have been doing TikTok like I think this is going to be my fifth summer, like 5 years now in a row, because we started in 2020. And it started as I was on maternity leave of my second, and I was like in the thick of it. And I'm like, I know I'm not going to have many memories of this. So I want to record it and I want to be able to go back and watch it. And so that's what it really started as, was like I was making them for myself. And then I thought, oh, I'm building I'm getting some traction. I have some followers. Maybe I could gain some customers. So I thought, I'm gonna advertise to customers. But TikTok's such a broad community that I wasn't appealing to people within a drive of me. Like most of the people I was appealing to are Americans or are within a day's drive of me. And so they're not coming to buy my meat. Um, so I don't know. What TikTok has meant for me has changed. It was like, oh, I'll build a community and I'll build customers. And then I thought maybe I can make money off of this, but not realizing Canadian TikTokers don't make money. That changed pretty quickly. And then I really genuinely realized that I was like, well, what am I getting out of this? If I'm not getting customers and I'm not going to make money. And it got to a point where I was so popular that I was starting to become concerned for my children's safety. They were being recognized out in public. More than once, I had people show up to the farm without an invitation. So I stepped back from how much I was sharing specifically with the kids and like more of a vlog style. I stopped doing that as much. And it really turned into building a homesteading community and sharing the farming and homesteading lifestyle with people. And with that, I've gained the most amazing group of friends, like actual friends that I now I talk to them outside of TikTok. And when TikTok, they talked about that being banned, I made sure I had everybody's phone number that I interact with on a regular basis. And anybody who was local, I wanted to meet in person. And I wanted to form a group of people that were like-minded and doing similar things because I realized how lonely this lifestyle was. And I wasn't going to enjoy it if I didn't have that social aspect of it. Yeah. And TikTok does that because we don't leave our homes, we don't leave our farm. So TikTok does that for me every day. It lets me see my friends.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, for us, that's podcasting, and yeah, different online communities can really, it doesn't replace, personal connections, and obviously meeting people who live nearby is also important, but when there are less of us doing this thing, doing the farming thing, or even, I mean, specifically our podcast is for parents who are doing the farming thing, and both of those things can be isolating, right? Where it feels like you might be able to leave the farm, but then your kid needs a nap, or like they went to school and they brought home whatever plague was coming home, and so the thing that the one social event that you thought you were going to get to go to is now off the table. So yeah, finding connections with people who have similar interests is really important.
I think too, Stephanie, it seems like a lot of times the using social media for marketing is, the people who see it are like halfway across the country. Like, we have a fair number of totally random folks who follow our farm Facebook page because it popped up somewhere. And I view it as kind of like a community effort that, like, maybe your customers won't see that TikTok, but maybe my potential customers will. And then they're like, oh, I should learn more about local food. And maybe your customers don't see your stuff, but they do see my stuff. And you're like, I wonder if there's someone who sells beef around me. And I see it as being a very team effort kind of a thing. Because it is really frustrating when you're like, I made this thing for my customers, and 95% of the people who saw it are over 70 and live in Spain. And you're like, cool. Yeah.
No, you make a really good point. Like that was 100% what I was trying to achieve. Like, I think it was in 2021, I gained a lot of traction locally. I was on the news a few times about my TikToks, and I was like, they're like, do you have enough product? And I was like, well, if I don't, other small farms do. Like, it's not about coming and buying from me. I'm not trying to advertise for myself. Like, my thing is always within a half an hour of where you are, even if you're in the middle of the city, there is somebody doing what I am doing. I promise. All you need to do is start looking. And that's the problem, is that the small scale producers are not able to advertise and get the customers out to where, and the customers aren't willing to go to them. So first, A, the customers don't know they exist, and B, they're like, oh, well, it's out of my way.
Right. Yeah. If it doesn't show up on my doorstep, it's not worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like you'll get this here in Canada. Like I always just keep joking. I'm like, well, everyone hates Galen Weston, but they all want to give him their money. Nobody wants to drive to my farm and give me any money, which would actually make the biggest difference, you know? Like supporting local, putting the money into the hands of people you know is all I've been asking my viewers to do. I'm not asking them to come to my farm, but find a farm that's like mine and buy from them.
So when we're talking about community, I noticed from your social media that you're also part of a women in homesteading group. Can you tell us a little bit about that group of women?
Yeah. This has been a group that I've been a part of since last summer, and it's like a major passion for me right now. The Women in Homesteading community is just Women in Homesteading. You can find us at womeninhomesteading.com. It is a in-person group that we're trying to form like internationally. Like we're trying to basically create chapters here in Canada. There's many of them, but we're also trying to push it so that it's just an international organization. Because the idea is it's a free in-person group where we all get together and share our like-minded ideas and skills and allow women to grow even more and more than they are as individuals in the homesteading community. One thing I have learned really quickly is as a homesteader, I can't do it all. Like, I want a sourdough. I want a can. I want to grow a garden. I want to grow meat. But all that, like, I don't have enough time in a day. So, what I can do is form a community with other women. Well, you know, men are important too, but we're all about the women in the women in homesteading community.
It's in the name, so I get it.
Yeah, and I've been calling it a sisterhood. Like, it's a sisterhood of women that can work together so we don't have to get burnout. We can utilize each other. I didn't have a mother that knew how to can or bake sourdough or any of those things. She taught me the most amazing life skills, but there are skills I wish I had been given that she didn't have, that the women that I'm now meeting do, and they're willing to share it. So the idea is it's a free in-person meetup that we're sharing basic skills, all just because we want to encourage people to live this lifestyle. And I keep saying, you don't need a certain amount of acreage to be a homesteader. You just need to have a passion for living this lifestyle. You don't even have to be doing it yet. We can get you started on that. But the importance of community sufficiency over self-sufficiency, it's key in finding success in homesteading. If you're trying to do it all on your own, you will become very frustrated. If you're doing it with a team, it gets a little easier.
I think that's such a great point, Stephanie, because I mean, it certainly sounds like it's an issue in Canada and everywhere else, but I think Americans are known for having this mindset of like, I can do everything on my own, and if I don't do it on my own, it does not count. And I mean, historically, we hear these women who are like, well, but my great grandmother did XYZ and, had 12 kids and all this. And I'm like, but she also had a community. Nobody was supposed to be doing all that canning by themselves, doing all the butchering by themselves while watching their 12 kids and baking sourdough and making soap. Like, it was never meant to be a solo thing. And also, they did it to survive. Yeah, your motivation's real different if you're not going to eat. If you don't do the thing. And that's not something that people should be punished for now. Because I feel like it can get to be this real, like, purity thing, that if you bake your own bread 90% of the time, but then you bake one, you buy a loaf, you've failed and you're going to get kicked out of homesteading now. Or if you can, but you don't bake sourdough.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Well, and that's what's so nice about this group is we have very differing opinions. Some of us have very strong faith-oriented like reasons for doing it. But we're all very different and we do homesteading differently. We have different approaches to how we raise our livestock, and even just how we do sourdough. Like all that stuff it varies from person to person, but we're an open and accepting community that I like to think homesteading is a little like parenting. Like, take what you want from the advice, and if it doesn't work for you, you don't have to do it. Okay? It's fine. We will allow you to do it whatever way you want to. It's a no judgment zone. And yeah, it's just mainly an area of support, which I feel more and more farmers and homesteaders need, and they may not realize it.
I mean, I feel like generally, unless I'm really concerned that someone is going to actively die from what you're doing, you know, have at it. If you want to do bedtime different or you do your sourdough different, cool. If you're letting your 2-year-old make lye soap by themselves, that I might express a concern about. You know, like, I feel like that's a valid place to be like, have you thought about not doing this? But anything like much short of that, have at it. You know, it's not my business. And it's, ugh. People do have opinions about sourdough, though. It's unreal.
That is true.
People have their opinions about everything, and what's alarming to me is that most often the people that are most passionate about an opinion are people that are coming from no experience on that subject. Like, I think the people who've decided that it's actually going to be my hobby to be a keyboard warrior, those are the folks we really need to work on, like finding a different hobby for. Social media would be so much easier without the keyboard warriors.
Well, anybody who's done the thing knows that there's more ways to do it than there are people doing it. You know, and they can all succeed or work for you and not for me or whatever, you know, and it's just...
Yeah, and there's lots of different ways to fail and lots of different ways to succeed. So, yeah, you can help people get to the succeeding part quicker, but yeah, sometimes the failures are necessary too.
I've learned so many more things from my failures than I have from my successes. Because I always just laugh. I'm like, well, when you succeed, you've just achieved what you thought you would. Like, when I grow my chickens out and they all grow out, I'm like, okay, I have chicken in my freezer. That's what I knew was going to happen, right? Nothing, there wasn't any adjustments or no like life lesson there. It was just, oh, it worked. But when something fails or when you lose something, it sticks with you so much more. You beat yourself up over it if there's losses or whatever, and so it's such a stronger lesson that you're going to take that and apply what you've learned so much more thoroughly. Like, I always tell people, I'm like, fail ends for first attempt in learning. That's all. Take what you've learned and change.
I think, too, there can be such immense freedom and power in being underestimated. Because if you're new to something and you don't know what success really looks like, and everybody thinks you're an idiot, the worst that's going to happen is you'll prove them right. And if they're decent humans, they'll help you so you don't do it again. If they don't help you, they're probably not people you really want to spend a lot of time concerning yourself with. And if things go right, you can just be pleasantly surprised, and everybody else can be too. And I feel like the number of things that have worked in my life that quite possibly only worked because I had no idea that they weren't supposed to is tremendous. And I think there's so many things that I wouldn't have even tried or been as persistent with if I had known how bad the odds were. The cow we started with was a bull twin who was sold to us as a beef cow entirely because, by all rights, she was infertile. And she's had, I think, 10 calves and fed 8 calves her first lactation. And all of this was stuff I was told would never work. And, nobody told her and nobody told me. So, we just did it. And I think there's a lot of things that are like that. And there's same way with kids. You just don't tell them you can't do it, and then they figure it out. Or not.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes spectacularly, yeah.
I always say that about their food. Someone will be like, oh, they're not going to eat that. I'm like, well, they just heard you say that, so they're definitely not going to eat it now. Just don't say anything and they'll try it.
Yeah, or depending how stubborn they are, then they'll be like, watch me.
Either way, one or the other.
So, what are some of the things that you're doing to prioritize your mental health?
Oh my. I think just, I mean, for me, the biggest thing is being aware that I struggle with my mental health. Like, um, I became a mother and a farmer all in the same year. And that, like, really what I was taking on as far as a mental load really didn't hit me until about 3 years in. Like, I was like, I am so, what did I say to my husband? I said, I should be happy. Like, we have two daughters, we have this beautiful life. Like, I am capturing beautiful moments that everyone's like, oh, I want your life. And at the end of the day, I'm still just sad. Like, everybody goes to bed and I'm sitting here alone. And I'm like, and I'm just sad. And I love my husband because he did the most amazing thing for me at that moment. He said, I love you and I'm sorry you feel that way, but I don't think I can help you with that. Like, I think you need to speak to someone. And I think a lot of people might have been like, at the moment I was discouraged. I was just like, great, thanks. Thanks so much for your help. But like, that was the help I needed.
Yeah, as a partner, yeah, just fix it for me. Like sometimes we don't want our partners to fix things for us, but sometimes it's like, just yeah, you tell me what to do. I don't want to have to seek someone else out. But yeah, that is really powerful to hear your partner say that they can't help you, but they believe that you need help.
Yeah. And like, he's like, thank God you're finally realizing it because I think he'd been drowning for 6 months. And yeah, I started speaking to a therapist. It's just like an on-call therapy thing. So I always say, like, I need a therapist on call. I found that when I need it, I call it. Sometimes I can go 8 or 9 months without feeling that I need to speak to someone. But like in my research and in coming to the realizations and the acceptance, like, hey, I'm depressed. I have depression and anxiety. I realized like that's totally normal. Like between postpartum and the mental illness that comes from being in the agricultural sector. Like we really, anybody that's in farming should understand that you have like a 30% more chance than anybody else around you of being depressed. Like there, you are much more likely to be affected by mental health. And I believe that is because so much rests on our shoulders. Like literally, not am I going to eat today? Is the world going to eat today? You know, like that's huge. Um, I am so thankful for farmers, but I also think it takes a very strong individual to do it. And the realization that I struggle with mental health and that I need to be aware of it really gets me far. Like when I'm having a bad day or when I'm really in the I don't want to do this anymore moments, like we all get there. We have a bad day. You're like, I'm done. I'm done. Sell the whole property and I'll move to a condo in the city. Like I've had those moments. And then I sit down and I go, this is the bad part of your brain. This is the bad part of your brain. And I get out my phone and I call my therapist. Because sometimes working through the bad part of your brain or getting out of that bad part of your brain requires some assistance. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest thing is in keeping a handle on it is recognizing I'm always going to suffer from it.
I think, too, there's a lot to be said for just knowing that all farmers are going through these days of just like, fuck this, I'm out. Like, peace out, call the auctioneer. Let's move to town, done with this. Because I feel like there is that, the same as you look at other parents and everybody else's kids are better behaved and everybody else's parenting is easier and everybody else's farm is making more money, and nobody else's cows get out as often as ours do. And, knowing that all of those people are looking at you the same way, hopefully, unless you really are the bottom of the barrel, at which point, sorry, I'm sure there's somebody who's worse than you. Um, just that it is normal to want to quit your job. I mean, I think everybody who has a job, at least occasionally, has days that they're like, no, not doing it, and
But like you said though, Steph, that is also your brain telling you stories, right? You know that those things are not actually true, but it's easy to think to think those things or to believe those things when you're not at your best.
It can be very hard. Like I guess you could say like I'm the opposite of you, Kate. I am like the like obnoxiously positive person. I usually am always the kind of person that wants to stay positive and like kill people with kindness and be incredibly helpful. Um, but with that, like I was kind of like a people pleaser and I've had to adjust that. Like as a farmer, you're never going to please everyone. You're never going to be in all the places people want you to be. You're never going, and then also a parent, like add that to your list of things to do. If I didn't have my kids, man, I feel like I could definitely make more people happy. But and my kids are number one, and I don't, it can be so hard to always find the positive. Um, and so at the end of the day, that different, like someone, I think it was my therapist said to me, he's like, you're allowed to go to bed sad. He's like, you don't have to change your, like how you see things. If you had a bad day and at the end of the day, you're like, I hated today, he's like, that's okay. Like, it doesn't mean you're going to wake up and that the next day is going to be like that. But you don't have to change your perspective. You don't have to sit there at the end of the day and try to come up with ways that you can say, oh, well, I did have a good day. He says, because that's just, that could, in reality, that's going to make you more sad. That you're sitting there trying to find the positive. Just don't even think of it. If you had that bad a day, just let it go. And that meant a lot to me. Like I'd never actually had someone say that to me. Like you just don't have to be, you don't have to find the positive. You don't have to be happy at the end of the day. It's okay to go to bed and be upset about how the day went. That was huge. I guess I needed sometimes someone to give me permission because other than that, I've worked really hard on always being happy and you can't be.
I think for me, I mean, I'm a Midwesterner. It's like a genetic thing that you have to be a people pleaser who wants to help everyone. But the last decade has really beaten a lot of it out of me. That I try to be very helpful to people who haven't given me a reason not to, but that realizing how much time and space I gave to people who were always ready with a critique, but were not ready to be helpful. And that, you know, if you want to criticize me, that's fine, but you either need to help or you need to go away. And that those are, you know, if you're consistently bringing negative things, but you're never helping, then I don't have the time and energy to waste on that. And it's just not worth it, you know?
Yep, we are a little bit like sponges. Like we're gonna sponge up whatever energy we're around. It's another reason I've been very grateful for the women in homesteading community that I've been a part of over the last 6 months. Um, it's helped to not feel so alone. I feel like there are people that can relate to me and I can relate to a lot more than like I love my girlfriends, my friends that I've had for years, but they're not homesteaders, they're not farmers, and like when they come out here, it's a little bit like a vacation. So in their mind, like the life we live is very different from the life we actually live. So it's just an amazing thing again to have TikTok and have social media and to have the women in homesteading so that I realize like these experiences are not solely mine. I'm not the only one that feels this way. I'm not the only one that goes through this. And there are still people that are willing to support me through it.
We are often end up talking to women specifically, but all parents, I guess, about that time when they first became parents. And as you mentioned, you were starting farming and starting parenting at the same time. So when it comes to the parenting side of things, what do you think about when you think back to those first, weeks, months of becoming a parent for the first time?
Oh gosh. Um, that was like, I don't know. I don't have a lot of memories of shortly after I had my first. Um, it was the start of COVID. And it was just a first for everything for me, from being a parent to being on my own out at the farm, doing something nobody in my family had ever done before. So it's a reason that I'm very grateful for the TikToks that I'd made and the videos that I've recorded because Um, it was just a very hard, trying time, and I kind of think that I've disassociated from it. I hate to say that, but like I see videos and I watch old TikToks, and I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. Because our world changed so quickly. I bought a farm, and everyone's like, we're gonna come out, we're gonna help you. When the baby comes, like we can come. My mom's like, I'm gonna stay in a trailer in the back 40. And then COVID happened, and everyone who said like they would come out and help, which in reality, even if you didn't take up farming during COVID, you know that like only 20% of the people who said they'd come out to help are actually going to come out to help you. But COVID kept everyone away. So I was very secluded. It probably is the reason that I joined TikTok and became as faithful to it as I did. Um, Yeah, I I don't want to say I have regrets, but like I'm sad that I don't have more memories of the first few weeks of being a parent, but I think it is a good reason for it.
Yeah, I mean, the extra isolation of COVID plus new parenthood plus, living rurally is that sounds like a lot. I have said a, many times that I was glad that my kids were the ages that they were during COVID because I didn't have babies. And so I can only imagine that without the support that really feels essential in early parenthood, without that, that it would be so much harder. So when we're talking about family life, we know that often as farmers we have more creative solutions, or have to do different things than other people. So what do things like you and your husband have off farm work plus the farm and homestead and two young kids? Well, I don't even know if we asked originally, how old are they?
I have two girls. They're 3 and 5, so one's in school and one's not quite yet.
Right. So, what do things like childcare and off farm work and family routines look like for you guys now? And, if there were, changes over the years as they've gotten a bit older, how have those things worked out for you guys?
Well, again, like community and family is the only way that I'm able to do all the things that I do right now. Um, My husband and I like to say, like, we are incredibly blessed with the help that we receive, both from his side of the family and from mine. We have gotten a lot of financial support from his side of the family in order to make the investments we have in the first 5 years. And then my parents, while they are separated, they equally are willing to care for my children. So my dad is retired and my mom works part-time in childcare. So between the two of them, when I need someone to watch the girls, I have that. I have never questioned, like, if there's an emergency, I know I can pick up the phone and say, can you come? And someone's going to come. Um, and I wouldn't be able to farm if I didn't have that. Like, there were a lot of projects that I would not have taken on. My dad being retired and being very physically capable has also been a huge help. He's like, I call him my free farm help. He comes and he has passions that he like. I can't point at something and be like, can you go do that? Like he will choose his own jobs, but he'll come and do whatever like jobs, which is great because nobody was doing them before.
Maybe things you didn't even know were a priority all of a sudden are done.
Exactly. So I'm very like family is the only reason we're able to do what we are. Um, and I don't know, our priority, my husband and my priority has always been the girls. So when the girls were young, it was very important to us that I be home with them. So we had to make sacrifices to make that happen. Like there was things we went without, and that's fine. Um, and then once my first started school and my mom said, "Hey, I'm willing to watch the other one," then I was able to start working part-time. So I just without I'm going to go back to family. Without the family support, we would not be able to do what we do. But it also has been huge between my husband and I to prioritize the farm and to prioritize the children. We don't need to be, we don't have to have a bunch of savings in the bank. At the end of the day, we're not getting back the time we have right now with our children, or we won't be able to grow the farm as quickly as we do if I'm not here part-time. So we definitely have made those sacrifices in order to grow the way we have.
What is your favorite thing about raising kids with a connection to agriculture and farming?
I don't want to say that, like, it's going to sound so much bad. My kids are better than the other. My kids are just better. Like, they have so much more educational, hands-on experience. When kids are given hands-on experience and they learn by doing, they're so much more confident in who they are and what they're capable of at a young age. And that may change, right? My kids are young. I may not see that huge difference by the time they're hanging out with their teenage peers. But right now, my 5-year-old is so above the bar, educationally, socially, physically. Like she can lift a 25-pound bag of chicken feed, no problem. I'm so proud of the things that my child is capable of just simply because I have included her in this lifestyle and I've made sure that she's been a part of it. The fact that my kid can go to school and tell everybody else in the class about, where their food comes from, and she does it so confidently. Or we were watching Babe the other day, and at the beginning of Babe, the moms all disappear. And like in that story, they don't talk about where the pigs are going. And my daughter's just like, oh, they're going to the butcher. Like so matter of factly. And I feel that I wasn't raised that way. I was not as connected with where my food came from. I didn't understand that like, hey, going to the store and buying bread is not, that's not where it comes from. That's not where, you know, um, I'm just very proud of the education my children are receiving just by being here. I'm not having to work at educating them. They're just gaining it. They're not better, but they are.
It's okay. We all know our kids are the best.
Yeah, and I don't homeschool, so a lot of homesteaders do homeschool, and I'm kind of taking advantage of the opportunity to have my time back. Like when the kids go to school, yeah, that's great. Go to school. I can do some projects here that I've been putting off or whatever. Um, but we also don't like there are days that I feel that there are things happening on the farm that are going to benefit my children more than sending them to school. So I'm kind of working hand in hand with the school to give my children the best education I feel they could be provided. I I'm not like, hey, you have to go to school every day. If my daughter's like, I really wanted to help you take the chickens to the butcher, I'm like, sure, you can stay home and you can do that. We're just gonna go with whatever's gonna give you the best information and knowledge in that day.
I have to say that's the awesome part of a lot of rural school districts too. Is like our son was not the only one who skipped a day of school to go to the big tractor show down in the state capital this year. And it's nice to be in a school where calling in and saying your kid is going to a tractor show is not like record scratch, gonna have to call DHS to report. Um, so other than biting your tongue to not tell people how their children aren't living up to the same standards as your children, which I totally understand, the only fact that your kids are younger than mine and in a separate country is why I believe we can agree to disagree on whose kids are better. Other than that, what is your biggest parenting struggle?
Uh, my biggest struggle right now is to not let the guilt get to me. Um, as someone who has so much going on, I often, at the end of the day, I feel as if I have not committed enough time to my children. Like they've been around me, they've been doing the things been doing all day, but then I sit down at the end of the day, I'm like, my kid really wanted me to color with them, or my kid really wanted me to read that book to them. And I was like, no, we've got to go do this, or we got to go do that. And um, I have to work harder at not feeling guilty about that, that my children are happy and healthy and getting everything that they need. And there are days that I sit down and I color with them. There are days that I read the book at the end of the day. if I can't or don't do it every day, that's okay. And I've been really struggling with that one recently because I've been feeling pulled in a lot of directions. And I think that the key to that is just sitting down and asking my kids, like, are you okay? Like, do you need a mommy a daughter day? And I'll give them that. But yeah, mom guilt's pretty real.
Yeah, and sometimes even, when you look back on the course of a day, you might have that feeling, but to remind yourself, like, but, at bedtime, or, that 10 minutes where I did stop what I was doing and really connected with them, like, hopefully, I think as parents, we can all hope that those are the times that they remember, and, that we tried, right? That there were, that in in an entire day they didn't get dedicated attention, but they got it when they needed it, and that they were a priority some of the time, but that family priorities are also important too. So what is a piece of parenting advice that you would share with other farming parents? I guess it doesn't have to be farm related, but is there something that you've learned along the way or someone shared with you that you kind of keep in the back of your mind?
Don't sweat the small stuff. Uh, like your kids are going to be themselves and they're going to make mistakes just like we do. And like we can't control them. They're own little tiny humans that have their own thoughts and processes and opinions. And yeah, that's my big thing is just let them be themselves. And as long as they're doing it safely, you know, just you will have a better relationship with your children if you let them be themselves and try not to interfere with that too much. Yeah.
So, we ask all of our guests, if you were going to dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be? And categories can be real or made up to ensure that you win.
Um, that's a tough one. I have actually entered last year, I entered for my bread making. I make all our bread at home and I have a pretty awesome sandwich bread recipe. So I have actually won first place for the bread making in my area. Yeah. I entered last year. I think I probably mixed up the category a little bit. They're like, where'd this lady come from? But she won first place. But if I could pick one,
Yeah, all the old ladies who've been entering bread for the past 35 years, they're like, wait a second.
you know,
Who is this entry
as
from?
I was like hiding my face when I went to pick up my award at the end, I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm sorry. But yeah, if I could pick one though, I don't know, like what category? Friendly cows. I want to have the friendliest cow. My cows are not pets. The boys are all going for beef and the girls had better give us a calf, but if they're not friendly cows that I can go out and pet, they don't stick around.
So we will go ahead and move into our cussing and discussing segment. If you're a listener and want to submit yours, you can go to our SpeakPipe or our email, and both those links are in the show notes. Kitty, what do you have to cuss and or discuss this week?
So, I'm 43, right? And I knew from the get go that with the fertility issues that I dealt with, I was likely to hit perimenopause early. I did not realize that this meant bizarre cycles, horrible breakouts, and hot flashes literally at the same time. Hot flashes are bullshit. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Not a fan? 0 stars.
Yeah, I think that's... No,
Yeah.
2 thumbs down. 2 big thumbs down. Yeah. Stephanie, what do you have to cuss and discuss?
I feel like perimenopause needs to be discussed more. Everyone prepares you for menopause. No one prepares you for perimenopause, and it is just as difficult to get there. So I can agree with that one. Uh, well, my big thing right now is livestock guardian dogs. So I have 4 of them, and my biggest pet peeve right now is people posting them on Facebook of there's a dog wandering, call animal control. I'm like, please don't. Please don't call animal control and take that dog away from its neighborhood where it knows and is probably returning home to take it to Humane Society an hour and a half away for a farmer who's not going to pay to get that dog back. Please don't do that. If you see an LGD out wandering and it's not on its own property, leave it alone. It will return to where it's supposed to go. It is coyote breeding season. Nobody is able to keep their LGD home 100% of the time. Calm down, city people. They know where they are and they're going home.
I have to admit, I watched your TikTok about people with LGDs as pets today. And as someone who is in an Australian Shepherd subreddit that is entirely populated with people who have Aussies as house pets in cities, and then talk about how much energy their dog has, I mean, my dog's insane, and she has 300 acres to run, and sheep. And just for the love of God, don't get a working breed dog as a pet. Unless you're really prepared to run a lot. And then more than that. And then probably more than that. And also when people say, I didn't think Aussies shed. Seriously.
Yeah. I have an Australian cattle dog. And I had someone say to me, like at the dog park, they're like, oh, I want to get one of those. I'm like, oh, do you have cattle? No. I said, then don't.
It's in the name. It's right there.
They're named that for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah. Arlene, what do you have to cuss and discuss?
So mine right now is the parenting feeling where you're nervous for your kid because they're doing a big thing. My 17-year-old is doing his driving test today, and I think when I get off our call, I will find out the results. But just like, I was actually glad that we had this interview booked because it was like, sorry, husband, you're going to have to take him because like, I don't think my nerves could handle it because I just don't know if he's going to pass or not. And I know that feeling because I have failed driving tests myself. It is nerve wracking. And yeah, just like the transferage of being nervous for when someone else is doing a thing. I mean, I guess I was prepared for it, but yeah, it continues.
It takes some getting used to as a new parent. Like, and I've been only really kind of experiencing it since my oldest went off to school, but it's like, oh, all of a sudden I'm getting these secondhand emotions. And like it's a lot.
Right. Yeah. They're dealing with stuff. Yeah. And I can't help them with it. Like I'm not there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was like having a hard time with the kid, and I like came out of the room talking to her, and I looked at my husband, and I'm like, I'm gonna end up knocking out a 5-year-old. Like, don't let me go to that school. And he's just like, calm down. But it was unexpected.
And tomorrow they might be best friends again, but then we hold a grudge against that kid until they're in high school because it's like, oh, was that the one who was mean to you in kindergarten? Still don't like them.
It was super unexpected for me this year, and I'm like, oh, I guess this is something I'm gonna have to get used to. I don't have any control over your life, but I'm like living precariously through you.
I know I've said this to Arlene, whether on the show or off before, but I would have put money on the fact that I never would have wanted to throw down with the 6-year-old until I had kids. And now I'm like, I will come to your house, kid. Like, obviously, no, I'm not going to. They are children. But I didn't have any idea of how much I would want to.
Yeah, that's right. And then, like I said, like that flip of emotions when then they're on the birthday invitation list. It was like, oh, but hold on a second. I thought we hated Taylor. Like, what?
Oh, you mean that list of kids that our daughter was having trouble with that's hanging on the side of the fridge that thankfully we didn't talk to the teacher about yet because 2 weeks later now they're all besties and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, we just have to have short memories like our children. Yeah. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us today. If people want to follow you on TikTok, if they want to learn more about women in homesteading, where should they find you online?
Yeah, primarily I'm on TikTok as Copperwood Acres or Copperwood Mom. Both will come up. But the Women in Homesteading has its own website, womeninhomesteading.com. And you can also find Copperwood Acres, the farm, on Facebook. That's kind of where I advertise more locally. So if you're in the Peterborough, Campbellford, Havelock area, and you're looking to purchase from a small farm, you can definitely look us up. And I always say, if I don't have it, I know someone who does. So don't be afraid to just shoot me a message and tell me what you're looking for.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It was great meeting you.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, please support us on Patreon with a donation.
Big thanks go out to our show editor, Krista Paffrath at the Rural Podcast Network.
Please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
If you want to connect with other farming families, join the private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch.